So I'm Subhrajit Saha from Department of Radiation Oncology. I'm a NIDDK Chur awardee, like expats, you can say. I mean, it's been over for like a couple of years. So today, I mean, we are 4 panelists, and we will go over a few of the K awards and how do we apply and what we need to gear up for that and all this. So let's start this session with this question. Why do you need a K award? I mean, I know it's a mixed group, like there are postdocs, grad students, medical fellows. Anybody can raise hand and try to answer this. Why do you need a K award? I mean, obviously you're all interested in K, and that's why you came here. Any suggestions? Why do you need it? Yeah.
So to gain additional training to promote the transition to faculty.
Mm-hmm. Very simple, I would say, in a simple way, to get a job. That's all. So yes, it's not applicable for those who are already in the position, but it's primarily for the junior faculties who are still not independent, people who are late stage of their postdoc or clinical fellowship. This is a perfect bridge to get you a job. The reason? School doesn't need to pay you. You get your own money, you get your own salary, and the rest of life you are hopefully doing that, which is not a good thing to do, but that's our life. So that's the first thing you are showing the world, that you can bring in money even at this stage at the junior level. So that's the most important part. Now for those faculties which already have a position, this K award will give you more breathing space. If you write for your first R1 or an independent award, this will really give you like almost a 5 year of breathing space to prepare yourself. So it's not moving. Should be the way.
Let's see. Oh gosh. Let's see. Oh gosh. Here. Oh, I just saw it. Just saw it in the corner.
It's probably the sharing problem.
There you go.
So
So if I think you keep it right on there.
let me check whether
Yeah.
it's easily movable or not. Yeah.
Okay.
Now it's looking better.
Good job.
Okay.
Okay.
So this is like a timeline. Okay. So since you're a high school student and you end up your career as an independent investigator, where this K award actually falls in. So over here we are seeing most of these K award applications. So it's really beginning from your like a late postdoc stage to early faculty stage. And there are multiple types of award you can really go for, considering you are a PhD candidate or you're an MD candidate. Starting from the K1 and up to the K99. Now there is a big difference in this. And we have a Bret Freudenthal, Dr. Freudenthal will tell you about more about the K99. I will primarily focus on the K1 and to some extent K12. The K1 is a 5-year mentor award, unlike K99, which is a 2-year mentor award. So the requirement for the K1 application is a bit different than the K99 application, all right? But it's still very advantageous to give the K1 upfront. The requirement, other thing, from your citizenship category, you have to have at least the permanent residency to be eligible for a K1 applicant, okay? What are the advantages to be in the K1? In my knowledge, when we are looking for the K1 award, it is a bit more flexible in terms of the time of your postdoctoral period. Usually in K99, nowadays, the new rule is only 4 years you will get after your graduation. But in K1, still, abruptly they are considering 5 years, but people can get even at the 7th year. So this is more flexible. So it will give you more time to prepare for that. The other thing is that the money-wise is less funding, but it will cover your salary. So that part is really great. So next 5 years, either you are K8 awardee or K1 awardee, you really don't need to think about your salary. But the research fund is a little less. So that's one of the negative part of that. Now, the competition wise, I would say, it is little less competitive than the K99. The requirement level when they're going through the peer review, it's little less. One of the reasons probably is that the funding allotted to you is not really at the level of K99. It is primarily covering your salary, unlike K99 where they give you basically a startup fund. The next step is that not everybody can apply the K1. As I mentioned, you need to have at least the permanent residency. So in K99, you can apply from the visa. So that's another thing. There is K12, which is an institutional K grant. There is other K grants which are kind of independent investigator. You have to be, because you need to show like you have a complete independence, but you can have a mentor on those awards. So the first thing you need to do as a K1 awardee is to identify the agency. Where do you want to go for this application? Because there are so many, K99, that's why it's better. It almost covers all the agencies, but we really struggle when we are looking for the K1 because not all the agencies have the similar type of K1. Like NCI, in those days, there is primarily they focus on the epidemiology, not really a research related grant. NIDDK was one of the best ones, which covers almost all the fields they fund in senior investigator level, they fund in the K level as well. So the first thing you should do is identify your agency, talk to the program director, go with your project and talk to them and see what is their feedback. Will they have a scope for you to apply? This is most important. Otherwise, it's all loss of time. So I just put some of the examples here, the program directors from NIDDK and NCI. There are so many. It depends which area you are really working on. Sorry. All right. So the funding wise, this is like a small statistics what you can get from any NIH agency where you are really interested to go. This will give you that what is their main focus. Are they really focused more in the K99? They are focused on the K08, they're focused on K01, or like the K23. So you need to see this sort of pie chart, and it's been available in all the NIH website for every agencies. And it's pretty much a hopeful picture, unlike the R1s. I mean, if you consider the last 10 years, in every agencies, right from NCI, NIDDK, NIID, you don't see the funding will not that kind of a consistent bar diagram where you don't see the funding really drop down. So that's one of the good thing, because that impact of current financial situation doesn't really put on those K award program. So that part we are kind of relaxed. Second is, this is the NIDDK chart where you can see that why I say the K1 is kind of more advantageous to apply if you are eligible. I mean, you can see, right, compare the K99 and K1 in NIDDK. Until 2018, K1 is way up, the number of successful applicants. And we have seen, there is a chart, which I don't get it here, the number of K awardees converting those K to the R1s are also pretty high in the K99 and K1 category compared to anything else. Now, before you apply, what you should do? First, discuss with your mentor. So you need to, as a junior postdoc or as a senior postdoc, you need to first get your mentor says, yes, you can go for that. And there is a reason, and it's a vital reason, because reviewers will primarily look for that when you mention your career development. Identify a project, talk to your mentor and identify the project. This part is very critical, because your mentor need to say that, yes, this is your project, you will take it with you and you will develop your lab with that project. I will not have any conflict on that. So that's the most important part in this aspect. Develop a mentoring plan. This is also another one. You can have your mentor, and remember, you are with that mentor for last 5 years or 4 years or 3 years, but you need to have maybe 1 or 2 more mentors. The reason behind that, the main objective of this K award is that we are giving you the fund to learn something new and which will help you to bridge. So reviewers will look at it, they said, okay, hang on, this guy is doing the same work with this previous mentor and continue with him. So what's new opportunity he's bringing in? So having a co-mentor is always advantageous. But remember, it has to be complemented very well. You need to justify why you are having a co-mentor in your project. Then develop the specific page. Develop the career development plan. I will go to those two things in detail for the next slide, but then show to the program director first. Don't go ahead and apply your proposal. You go to the program director, have a discussion with him or her, and say that these are the two things I am planning for. Do you accept it or not? If not, then switch the agency. I have this experience before. When I was there in a KAWD, when I was rather than awardee as an applicant, I went to different agencies, right from NCI to NIDDK, and finally NIDDK say yes. I'm a radiation oncologist. This is my personal experience I'm sharing. I'm a radiation biologist in a radiation oncology department. When I went to NIDDK, they said, hang on, I don't do anything with the radiation. You go to NCI because radiation has dealt with the cancer. And so I had to explain to that lady saying that, look, yes, radiation was used for the cancer, but show me a better tool where you can identify a stem cell and study a stem cell other than radiation. Radiation gives you the best platform to develop a stem cell study. And then she agreed. And then she gave it to, to me to apply. So technically what you need to do, if you are really switching the agency, you need to identify their gap and reorient your application according to that. So that's the way you can convince. So that's why the discussion with the program director is very critical. So these are the 4 major components in your application. First is the research strategy. Don't take it easy. There are discussions I have heard when I was applying. No, research strategy, you can kind of, okay, you are a junior one, it will be looked as a junior one as well. So you don't really think yourself that you are going for R1. Don't take those words. It will be critically reviewed like you are applying an R1. Make it like an R1. But at the same time, make sure that your writing and all these things doesn't show that it's a copy of your mentor's grant. If it is like that, it will be dinged right away. That's number 1. So these are common strategies. You have the specific aim, significance, innovation, preliminary data, experimental design, milestone, that's all. Now, the second important part, you have to show the pathway to independence. And there comes a complete layout of your plan, that like a milestone, that if I get the grant, year 1, I'll be doing this, year 2, I'll be doing this. It is different than K99 again, because K99, the first 2 years is mentored, then you are independent. Here, it is a bit different. But here also you have to show in a K1 award that these are the each year, these are the things you are continuously doing to make you a complete independent investigator. Then the career development plan. Don't show this as a hand-waving one. And this is a very common issue I see in the applications. I mean, I will take this training. I will go to these kind of classes. There is no kind of classes. You say that these are the classes I will go as a audit course or something. These are the classes being taken in this hour to this hour. So they really want to see that you are really mean it. It's not like I will go and take a immunotherapy class. No, tell me who is doing that. If you have a web class, show that link. If you have a chart of a coursework in a school, put that over there and show that I'm identifying, I'm taking this, this, and this. This is very critical. Then the intramural and extramural meeting. I recommend that whoever is applying for anything like K1 or K99, please go to any of the coursework being delivered by the Cold Spring Harbor or MIT, the first grade ones. These are very critically looked after when it's getting reviewed. Then the final one is letters. This is immensely important. You need to have a letter from your mentor, make him put this in a bullet point and make him like a bold one, like need to state the applicant can take this proposed project with him and make his own lab. He has no conflict with that. That's the line reviewers are really want to see over there. Then the departmental chair letter. Some people get confused. They say the departmental chair should write that he will be a promising candidate and he probably will get a job in our department. No, that's not the letter will come from the department chair. Department chair will say that how supportive this department is while he is pursuing this award. How much positive environment they can provide for this award to get it pursued. That part, whether he will get a job or not, is the responsibility of the school's dean. You need to get this discussion going through your mentor, through your department chair, to the leadership, that can you believe on this candidate to give him an independent position in your facility, even without getting this K award. I personally got this comment when I have applied, and one of the reviewers mentioned that I don't see that he will get the position even if we don't fund his K award for him. I know it's very difficult to get this nod from the leadership, but you have to do this diligence. These are very critically reviewed. So later is the most important part, I believe, in this application. So finally, I'm almost concluding. So for all the junior ones, the graduate students primarily, taking your postdoc lab is kind of a foundation for all this. When you are selecting your postdoc mentor, make sure that he has a track record for getting the new people to the branch of K99 or K1. Make sure that he has a previous track record where it's not like great scientist he is developing. How many faculty jobs from that lab is getting developed eventually? It's not that this guy came here from abroad, went back and started his lab in Vietnam. It will not work. Whether he has his lab in this country, how many of his previous lab worker is getting a job over here? That's one of the major criteria as a PhD student when you are taking your lab. Thank you.
Questions after? I may need that mic from you, or I guess,
yes.
or you can keep it. I feel like I'll do this the whole time.
That will make it work properly.
Ascend workshop, really clear. Right? Cool. All right, let me get this situated. Anyone tired of the feedback yet? Okay, we good? Can you guys hear me okay? Yes, no? All right, so I'm Bret Freudenthal. I'm in the biochemistry and cancer biology department. I don't really have a background slide quite yet, but I'll give you a sense of my path at least first. I went to the University of Iowa, studied biochemistry, was a structural biologist. I then went to the NIEHS, which is an NIH branch located down in Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina, and worked for a famous lab. They're also doing structural biology as well, and doing enzyme kinetics, learning more about DNA repair and DNA damage. I then applied for a K99 and was fortunate enough to get that. And opened my lab here now almost 4 years ago, I would say. And so I've had a little bit different of a career path. I'm fairly opinionated about some of my K99 stuff. With all of us, I would encourage you to take it with a grain of salt. Everybody's path is different. Everybody goes a different route. There's not one way to do this. I must respectfully disagree with the prior panelists that K99s are meant to solely provide you jobs, because if you look at the statistics, most people don't have K99s, right? There's more jobs than K99s that are given. So just the straight statistics should find you some peace of mind. Also look at other people around here. We just hired someone in biochemistry that didn't have one. You guys probably know Prachi. From my recollection, I don't know if Prachi had a K99, and she's outrageously successful. So don't lose hope through the process. And I recognize that it helps you get a job. So I'm not trying to create confrontation with my prior colleague, but I think it's important that I push back on this as someone that got this, that if you lose hope by not getting a K award, you won't make it even in the R01 pool. So you've got to get a little bit of a thick skin about it. It does help, and it also comes with its own challenges getting a K award, which I'm happy to answer some questions about. So, you know, take everything I say today with a grain of thought, but with a, you know, take it for what you want it for. So to begin with, what is a K99 R00? So a K99 has 2 years of training component. The R00 has 3. Often, you may end up only doing 1 year of training component. I only did 1 year, and that's because you end up on the job market and you have to take a job or other dynamics. So it doesn't have to be 2, right for 2. The R00 is 3 years. And then I think the first thing you need to do is you need to sit down and decide, is this what I want to do? If I can't get the energy up to write a K99, and I think it's too daunting, and I don't really, my heart really isn't in this project, I'm just finding some other tangentially related thing, so I'm not copying my mentor, I really don't want to do this, don't write the grant. It's going to come through that way. You can follow every rule in the book, and you'll end up in this top 30 percentile clustering, and unless it comes through that you want to do this, it's not going to get funded. And if it does, you're then going to go to the job and the hiring committee is going to be like, well, this is nice and you have money, but you don't even seem excited about this. So make sure it's what you want to do. Self-reflect on that some. Also, you need to, as he commented about, we need to find the right NIH institution for your project. Talk to your program officer. Is there one? So for example, I targeted the National Institute of Environmental Health because they fund a lot of DNA damage repair grants. So go on NIH Reporter, look at K99s, go look at C by institution, look at NIGMS if you're in more basic research. If you're daring enough, go to NCI, which is challenging, but try to find a way to go to other ones such as NIDDK. I'd also ask yourself, are you ready to take on writing a grant? Is this the right time in your life? Is this when you should be doing this? You have that 4-year window. You know, I have 2 little boys, so maybe it's not the right time for you. Maybe you need to get out papers. And these are conversations you should have with your mentor. And if it's not your current mentor, maybe your past mentor. Have these conversations. Have these conversations with colleagues and friends, whether this is the right time. Who would be on your mentorship team? So who do you want to select? So whoever's going to be on your mentorship team, have the conversation about whether this is the right time. Will you have time to resubmit? So you need to take that into consideration. Are you just going to go after it and you only have 1 shot? And if I only have 1 shot, I need to shut down everything. Don't write a paper, don't do anything, just go after that. If you think you have multiple shots, maybe you can try to, you know, do some other things on the side. But I can tell you right now, it is incredibly hard to write a grant, both from a mentor standpoint, when I did it, or excuse me, when I've done it with my postdoc, Amy Whitaker, as well as from a mentee standpoint. It is hard to write a grant. There's a lot of documents to it. And so the other aspect is do you want to run your own lab? And if so, what style? So let's say, for example, you would prefer to run a lab at a small Midwestern school like Creighton, for example. If you want to go work at Creighton and you want to go have a predominantly teaching component with a little bit of research, I don't know if you need a K99 R00. What you probably need is you need training in teaching. You need to publish some more. You need to identify a project that you can do at those institutions. You need to identify ways to get inroads into whatever state you're trying to target. If you're trying to target the Midwest, that's where your energy needs to go. Right, for a K99 for the experience, that's great. But if you go to Creighton with a K99, they're probably gonna be confused why you're there. It may not. And so you have to do this because you want to do this. I can't stress enough, this job is, I love this job. I love the people I work with. I love my lab, but you have to want to do this. It's a lot of work. Don't just do it because you need to do something. That's the first step, I think, is self-reflection. And so find a spot you can do this self-reflection. Find the space you can do this. At least that's what I do. And I do the same thing when I'm starting out an R01. Am I excited about this project? Is this interesting? Is this where the field's at? Who's going to be on my study section? Do they seem excited about it? How can I leverage what I do really well against this? If I need to bring in new techniques, how am I going to bring in new techniques? And I understand all this sounds daunting, but you need to have the time for this self-reflection for this. So you've now decided you're going to do it by it.
What is it?
I think I've clicked every normal button.
No, right there, right there.
Okay, there's a new one. Sweet. Any help?
Should be right there.
Just click it with the mouse.
Yeah.
No.
Or just escape out. Does it touch screen?
Keep on filing them.
Now we've got them up here. Boom. No. Do you want to help me with that for a second? So the next step, if this showed up, it would say step 2. You now have to do it. Now, right? Oh, are you serious, right? Okay, right. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. That was not meant to be that way. So step 2 is what do you have to do to submit? How much time is it going to take? It's probably going to take you 3 to 4 months would be my guess. It's going to take you 3 to 4 months. Yes, you can turn one out in 3 to 4 weeks. It depends on if you're in a big lab that has all the tools and has the track record. Yeah, you can probably turn one out in 2 to 3 weeks. But it also at these big labs, which I came from, there's probably someone in front of you that has top priority for the K99 submission. So how do you fall in line with that? And this is my personal experience. This isn't always the case. But so you have to decide, do I have this time to do this? Have I published in the field? Have I gone to conferences? Go to conferences early. If you think you want to stay in the field your postdoc is in, go to conferences early. Go and try to rub shoulders with people that sit on study sections. Listen to what the keynote speaker is talking about and see how you can leverage their findings against something you can do. So obviously you need an Ames page, research strategy, all those things. You need a good mentorship team. Now, I'll be the first to admit, I don't have a whole lot of mentee experience. But I'll also be the first to admit that we created a really strong mentorship team that fit what we needed to do, had a whole lot of mentors that were actively involved. I also actively took all my students to conferences to show that I cared about my students, that I was mentoring them. And so we leveraged against that, and we really had no issue being a young investigator and getting grants in terms of getting dinged for the mentorship plan. But some of that is a case-by-case basis. The mentorship plan, I can answer any questions about. It needs to be detailed. Like the previous speaker commented about, basically everything that he said would also apply to this. It needs to be clear that you really thought a lot about this. And sometimes you hit the mark and sometimes you don't. The best way to figure out what to do is get other K99R00s. Grab 2 or 3 from around here. See what other people did. It doesn't matter if they're funded or not. I wouldn't think so much about whether they're funded when you ask someone for theirs, because 1, it's rude, naturally, to say that. 2, you don't know why it wasn't funded. Maybe it wasn't funded because I went to NCI, and this one was funded because I went to the Alzheimer's Center. And those funding lines are drastically different. So I would gather all the information you can, because what you'll find is you'll be like, oh yeah, I forgot that we went to that Ascend workshop, and that was in so-and-so's. I'm gonna put that in mind. That's a good idea. And you can start to gather information that way. The institutional environment is another document that's kind of a funky one, but it's just describing, for example, how well KU Med is set up to support you. And if you get people's examples, basically you'll have templates for this and you can pull on what you want. Institutional environment you can get from PI's R01s. There's components of that, especially young PIs. Project narrative is also a couple sentences, if I recall. Yeah, that's a short one. A couple sentences that's going to be involved in sort of a layman's version of your project. The cover letter, some institutions want them, some of them don't. It's another document you need. This is really meant to just show you all of these insane documents. The project summary, which will sound a whole lot like your abstract, right? So all of this is going to get horribly repetitive, but you want them to flow. You want them to hit on the points as best you can. You need bio sketches for everyone, and everyone will send you an old bio sketch that is not formatted correctly. And then SPA, whoever's submitting it at KU Med, will ask you to go and collect all those. So leave yourself time to get those bio sketches as best you can. The candidate statement, background goals, your training plan. This is really where you come to life, right? So they're going to want to hear why you're in science, why you care about this project. This is where this document is supposed to basically be an epitome of you, and include your training plan. And so if that doesn't come to life when you read it or when you write it and you don't care about it, I'm not going to be excited about it. I don't know how many times I've read a grant or heard a talk and I'm sort of like, well, they weren't excited about it, so I'm certainly not going to be excited about it. And you may get close to funding, but you won't get funded unless someone's like, I'm going to champion this grant and I'm going to carry this through. So they have to be wanting to champion you. You need an equipment list, which you can get from PIs, and your PI should hopefully have one. Facilities and other resources as well. In both of these facilities and other resources, equipment list, those things are great to get from other people because you'll find out everything that's on campus here. And then most of all, you're going to need patience with this, with your mentors, with your colleagues, because it's frustrating both as a mentee interacting with a mentor in my experience, and it's frustrating as a mentor interacting with a mentee when you're trying to find that fine line between, I want to tell you a project, but I want to make sure it's still mine, and and then the mentor wants to make sure that it's still their project, so they're not dictating it too much. So it's a different dynamic, and so you have to leave yourself some patience and time with the people you're interacting doing this. You also have to have perseverance. I mean, to be honest, funding lines are tough. It's tough out there. So you got to just keep at it. You also have to keep some perspective. Your life will not end. It is okay. You are not defined by whether you had a K99 or an R00. And I fully appreciate the fact that I'm standing up here and I got one and I'm saying that, but I can't stress enough. I say this every day in lab. This is truly what I believe, because you're not fully defined by just one event, by one study section. You won't be as an R01. And I've received R01s now, so we've gone on and we've been successful as well in that aspect. And then you also just have to have faith in the process and the project. So if you like the project, you think it's where the field's at, you're open to taking feedback from peers at conferences, you're open to talk to your peers around here, and they seem excited about it, have faith that eventually it'll get funded. I mean, you have faith in the process. I do think the process has its challenges. I don't think it's as broken necessarily, because I do think study sections are really trying to do the right thing, especially with trainees. They really are trying to bring up trainees. And so you do have to have some faith in it all. So sort of step 3 would be some tips that I have. So as I said, give yourself some time to submit the grant. mentally, say, okay, I got to stop at this date, so I need to get this draft to wherever this draft is. And also, it's probably important to have a publication in the field, I would say. I think it's an important thing if you can. If you can't, and you still think you have a good project, identify, maybe use preprints as a powerful tool. You could put a paper that you have out in preprints, and you can point them to that as saying, well, yes, I haven't published it because my mentor is outrageously, you wouldn't say that, but for some reason, someone's outrageously slow, and this is why it's bogged down, but here it is in preprints, or I'm fighting journals, or something like that. So you can use that as a way to try to show that you're ready to do this. Also, go to conferences. Go to a conference, like we would go to a Gordon Research Conference on DNA damage and repair. Give a poster on the topic. Try to rub shoulders with the right people and get feedback on it and show that you are an active player in this field and you are coming in and you're ready to go. As for feedback, as we've talked about, the hardest part is walking the tightrope between being the perfect candidate and needing more training. So how do you do that? Unfortunately, I don't fully know how to do that because it's the same thing that applies to an R01 as would apply to a K99. In the case of an R01, it's saying, look at how close I am to completing this, but I need 5 more years, right? So that's that dynamic. So you learning this dynamic with K99 of I'm the perfect candidate and I need a little bit more training in X or Y, starting this process here will help you throughout your whole career. And have people read it, have people give you feedback. Make sure all the documents kind of mesh together and read really well. As I said, ask to see other folks' grants. Contact your program officer to make sure that it's something that interests them. At a minimum, you can ping them if you don't want to give them the whole ins and outs. You can say, here's kind of what I'm thinking about. I want to make sure that I'm eligible. Here's my graduation date. And if they come back and they say, yep, you're eligible, sounds good, look forward to your application. Maybe that's all you needed. Maybe you just give them 1 or 2 broad sentences and they're like, yeah, looks good. So don't get intimidated about, well, what do I send them? Do I send them a names page? How much detail do I go? You can give them a broad email to initiate the conversation and let it flow naturally. If you want a ton of feedback, maybe after that's happened and they reply back and they give you a short answer saying, yes, I'd like to submit. Or yes, feel free to submit. It seems like it'd be a good fit. Say, could I send along my specific aims page? So then you're not just onslaughting program officers with a ton of stuff and you can start to develop a rapport with them. And that's just my experience. You guys do it however works for you. I think you have to do what excites you. I think you fundamentally have to. If you are chasing the hot technique, CRISPR, whatever it is, if you're chasing whatever cancer is most important right now, if you're just chasing that, you're going to be always chasing that. And you're going to eventually be just known as someone who's just chasing something and you're not ever building a depth in a topic. And that doesn't mean to not shy away from hot topics. If that's what excites you, go after it. Leverage maybe that technique against it. The K99 R00, I can't stress enough, is not a golden ticket. And it will not decide if you can open your own lab. That will not decide it. I have outrageously good colleagues. A postdoc on average is going to take 5 to 7 years. I've wrapped your mind around that. That's just the reality of it. No matter what the NIH mandates for rules, there's only so many jobs out there. And if you are in the pool, it may take a little while for you to develop kind of the prestige and the ability to go and interview and do some of those things. And so you may have a 5 to 7 year window. And so with that, you may age out of the K99 R00, but you may actually be a much stronger candidate. And then finally, the unfunded K99, when you thought everything was going to go to waste and you couldn't do this anymore, it will likely be an incredible first R01 right out of the gates. So with my R00, when I showed up here, I basically had to bring up a whole nother R01 from the ground up because the R00 didn't really provide for that. And so your K99 is now literally your job talk and you're going after that R01 and maybe you're completing some of it, but it does have a use or it can transition to other styles of grants. So you just have to be able to adapt and shift. And so this is my general view of the entire process. Don't take any of it as either negative or positive. I'm just trying to tell you on a practical sense what it's like, and also encourage you to apply for them and to reach out to people most of all. So hopefully I didn't go too long. I think I'm okay. So with that, that's all I have, and it's working now. So you're out. Thank you. Oh, yes.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me? Okay. Yeah, that was a great talk. I actually took notes myself, so I'm also learning. My name is Hannes Devos. I'm an assistant professor on tenure track in the Department of Physical Therapy and Rehabilitation Science. And I cannot speak too much on the K01 because I just received the K01 in February of 2019. But what I can talk about is my journey towards getting a K01. And of course, every journey will be different, but I want to highlight that no journey will be ideal. And I also want to talk a little bit about the hurdles that I had to cross in getting my K01. So my background is in physical therapy and rehabilitation science. As you can tell from my exotic accents, I'm not from the Kansas area, I'm from Belgium. So I did my undergraduate and graduate programs in Belgium in physical therapy and obtained a master's in 2005. And after my master's, I immediately started my academic career. So although I had a clinical background, I never practiced physical therapy 100%. I immediately went into academia and I started my PhD in biomedical science that I completed in 2011. And this is already the first tipping point, I guess, in becoming successful in an academic career is how to establish your own postdoctoral funds. So I was able to establish my own postdoctoral funds. I got a 3-year scholarship from Funds for Scientific Research in Flanders to complete a study. And meanwhile, I also applied to get a postdoctoral position abroad. The reason why I was also applying for a postdoctoral fellowship abroad was because eventually I wanted to take up a position in Belgium, and one of the expectations was to have experience outside of your university. So I got a fellowship from the Belgian American Education Foundation to pursue a postdoc at the University of Iowa. And while I was in Iowa, I was interviewed by an institution here in the United States, and I decided to stay in the United States and take on my first academic position. So when I started my academic position at the University of Augusta University, I had a percentage devoted to efforts that was 55%. Usually a tenure track position traditionally is a 40-40-20, 40% research, 40% teaching, and 20% service. So my research devotion was a little bit higher, but that also means that the expectations from the institution were higher. So there was definitely at Augusta University a push to be successful in obtaining grants. And Augusta University is a university that is considered an R2 university, if you're familiar with that. R2 university means that they're in the top 50% of research universities. KUMC is an R1 university, so they're considered in the top 25% of research universities. Why is that important? Because the institution will provide a research environment, and the research environment at Augusta University was perhaps not as competitive as an R1 university. And I definitely felt that in pursuing my academic career, especially in terms of research at Augusta University, that I was successful in obtaining pilot grants, but the big push towards a big grant didn't come. And it started affecting my research career to an extent, in the sense that when I was submitting for larger proposals and I went into my second year of my tenure track, reviewers started to comment on, this person has been successful in getting pilot grants, but he's not getting the big grant. Well, yeah, that's why I'm applying for big grants, and you're commenting that I'm not getting the big grant. So that was kind of ambiguous. So also the administration at Augusta University started to really push towards me getting publications. And that was for me a difficult time in my professional career as to what I should do. So I started to think, how can I remain productive in my research while pilot fundings are coming in and not getting the big grants? And I tried to apply the 3-3-3 rule. I haven't found that anywhere in the literature, but that was my own rule that I made up. And the 3-3-3 rule was, at all times, make sure that you're working on 3 publications. At all times, make sure that you're working on 3 research projects, either funded or unfunded. And at all times, make sure that you're working on 3 proposals. That shouldn't have to be as PI, but can also be as co-I. But that really helped me kind of visualize what I have to work on to remain productive. 3 publications at all times as first author or co-author, 3 projects at all times as PI or co-I, and 3 proposals that I should be working on. So that's kind of helped me prioritize what I should be working on. So after 3 years, I was interviewed here at KUMC, and I decided to take on that position. And in all fairness, this has been the biggest or the best career switch that I have made, transitioning from university. So when we're talking, I will also be talking about some tips and tricks on getting a KO1, but that will be my first advice, actually. Make sure that the institution fits your career goals, as Dr. Freudenthal already had mentioned. So I continued my tenure track position here at KUMC, and definitely there were some pros here. This is an R1 university. It has a great DPT program, so a doctoral program of physical therapy. It also has a PhD program in rehabilitation science. My previous university didn't have a PhD program, so I couldn't show any mentoring in that regard. It has an excellent neurology program. The senior administration, when I came here to interview, seemed very keen on hiring me. And that is also very key, making sure that you have the support from leadership and administration in pursuing your career goals, because sometimes you might be successful from the bat, and sometimes it may take a little bit longer. And definitely having that support from leadership helped me to get this KO1. What else? So at that time, at my previous university, I couldn't really start looking into K programs because the institution didn't have that network of K mentors. And here at KUMC, I was fortunate enough to surround myself with mentors that have already been successful in mentoring K awardees. And with talking with different department mentors, they advised me to go and talk and seek out Dr. Burns with the Alzheimer's Disease Center. And perhaps many of you know Dr. Burns. Dr. Burns is very successful in research, but is also a successful mentor. And that was actually key in finding Dr. Burns as my primary mentor. So with Dr. Burns, I applied for a KO1, which is a mentored research scientist career development award. The reason that I decided to go for that KO1 and not another KO1 is because my background, and that's why I spent some time explaining my background, lend itself well to this type of program. So getting a KO1 is a lot of fun because it has a lot of pros to it. Dr. Saha already mentioned that 75% will be devoted to research. And as a faculty, early career stage faculty, this is huge because you will be overwhelmed by so many responsibilities, not only in terms of research, but also in terms of teaching and in terms of service. And the fact that you can devote 75% that is protected towards research is definitely interesting if you are keen on moving forward with your research. That is for 5 years, so that is actually great. The salary is paid by NIH dollars. You're being mentored, which is also quite exciting to know that you're not alone in your early career. You're having a mentor team that can help you navigate not only your research career, but also navigate through a tenure track position. So that is also quite important. And also what is quite exciting about in KO1, that it's time to learn something new. And then that is also quite important in understanding about the K. It is not supposed to be an extension of what you have been doing so far. It should lead you to something new. And when we will talk about what the career development proposal should look like, you have to think about that. At what stage am I at now? What am I considered to be good at? And where do I want to be at the end of this KO1? And it should be clear that the KO1 is a stepping stone to an independent career. It's not the end goal of your proposal. So, but there's also some cons of having a KO1. You have limited funds to conduct your study. I guess, but don't quote me on that, I think you only have $20,000 per year for the logistics of your study. And that is not a lot. If you do neuroimaging, for example, it will not be enough to do a substantial study. So think about that too. Although it protects your time, your salary, it doesn't really supply you with a lot of funds for the logistics of the study. And something that you may not think about now, but it is quite important, that a career development stage award only supplies 8% of F&A costs, of overhead costs, while an R01 supplies 53% of overhead. Why is that important? Because the institution gets those dollars, and the institution likes you more and more if you get more and more F&A costs. So it's kind of important to consider that F&A is only 8%. And the mentors are not getting paid by your KO1. So they do that out of the kindness of their heart. So make sure that you have a good collaboration with your mentor. So I also want to close off with a couple of tips that I have in securing a KO1. And as I said, I think the number one is to decide on a university, making sure that if KO1 is your plan, and it doesn't need to be your plan, but if a K is your plan, then you have to make sure that the institution has experience with Ks and that it's a research-oriented university. The second tip would be making sure that you select mentors that are not only experts in the field, that have been successful with NIH funding, have a mentoring history with Ks, and that you get along with them. That is also quite important because it is like doing another PhD, and you have to make sure that you're not only passionate about the research project, but that you also get along with your mentor, because you're in the road together for about 5 years. So I was fortunate to affiliate myself with Dr. Burns and Dr. Brooks from neuroimaging, Dr. Gustafson from neurophysiology, and Dr. Gustafson from biostatistics. They will be your bigger supporters, but they will also be the advocates of the devil. And what I mean with that is that they will be very important in bouncing off ideas and reviewing and revising your proposals. So make sure that you start ahead of time and bounce off your ideas and bounce off your proposals with your mentor team. The third tip would be look at Paylines. Why is that important? Well, you need to follow the money. It might sound opportunistic, but it is the truth though. I have a background in Parkinson's disease, decided because I'm interested in neurodegenerative diseases, but I had no experience at all with Alzheimer's disease. But I do know that the Paylines for Alzheimer's disease are more competitive perhaps than the research lines on Parkinson's disease. So that is a career change that I made. So that is important to consider as well. When I submitted my first KO1, so the new KO1, the Payline was at 38, and I received a score of 30. I thought, yes, I got it with the first submission, but you also have to understand that the Paylines change from time to time. So when I finally received the news of my score, the Payline had changed from 38 to 28. So I was 2 points above Payline. So I was advised to resubmit, and when I resubmitted, I got a score of 30, and then the Paylines, a score of 20, and then the Paylines changed again to 38. So I was well below the Payline, but it's important to kind of consider that not only institutions have different Paylines, but that also the Paylines vary from time to time. Then there will be two important portions to your applications, and we've heard about that already. There's a research proposal, and I think we have all been trained, or we are being trained on writing a research proposal. But then there's also a career development plan. And I cannot stress enough how important a career development plan is. And perhaps we are not getting enough expertise in writing a career development plan. So definitely, as Dr. Freudenthal had said, make sure that you use existing KO1s from colleagues of yours to see what a career development plan looks like. And you will see that there's always buzzwords coming in, and making sure that those buzzwords are used consistently throughout all the parts of your proposal. Then talk with your PO, that is your program officer, as the previous panelists already have talked. Talk to your program officers ahead of time. With your mentor, show that you're a team, that you're both in this together, and don't be on the phone by yourself. Make sure that your mentor is present. So show that dedication, show the mentor that you're invested, show the PO that the mentor and the mentee are invested. Keep that line of communication open, right, with your PO. So check in regularly with your PO. Dedication would be my next point. Go all in. Go all in with this research project. I think as an early career faculty, you will be sucked into different opportunities, but you have to be very focused and go in with this career development award if that is what you want to be. Try to get pilot funding on this topic so you can already show some funding. Get productivity with your mentors, show that you can collaborate. Try the KL2. This institution has KL2 programs that perhaps is a perfect bridge towards getting a KL1. Try pilot funding from foundation agencies and get published. Get published, published, published. The most difficult tip would be get a score. Get a score. I definitely felt that that was a tipping point in getting my KO1. You could definitely feel that the PO became more interested in talking to once I got a score. That the mentor that has different projects, he has his own research, he's overseeing different mentees, but as soon as you get a score and it's a competitive score, everything starts to be aligning well. It's going to be easier to talk to your program officer when you get a score. It will be easier to get some protected time for your resubmission. When you talk to your department chair, when you talk to the dean and say, you know, I got a good score, I really need some time now to devote to my resubmission, they will be perhaps be more lenient in getting you some protected time if you got a good score. Something that has not been mentioned yet, but I do think it's a good strategy, is to check the roster of your review committee. Why is that important? Well, for example, I did a study on neurophysiology, but I approached the neurophysiology from a psychological standpoint. And then I looked into the roster and there was no psychologist on this roster. They were all imaging, they were all cognitive neuroscientists. So you need to make sure that you speak the language of the people that will be reviewing your proposal. I cannot stress that enough. If you don't speak the language of the reviewers, you might not be lucky in getting a KO1. And then finally is look at the review criteria. And you will see that there's a number of criteria that your proposal will be scored on. That is on candidates, the mentors, the environment, the research proposal, and the career development plan. And be aware of the fact that you will be competing with other K applicants, and make sure that at least 3 of the 5 score 1 or 2. And you can do that by following the tips that I already have mentioned to you before. Make sure that you come in with the best portfolio so that your candidate's assessment gets a 1 or a 2. Make sure that the mentoring team gets a 1 or a 2, and make sure that the environment gets a 1 or a 2. You will see when I'm evaluating other K awardees that they usually score 1 or 2 on these 3 criteria. The 2 aspects that people get dinged on is on the career development plan and on the research proposal. So make sure that at least your candidate, a mentor, and an environment is pristine and is scored very highly, and then work on research proposal and career development plan. And these are the 2 parts that will get you the KO1. Thank you.
It should be Casey somewhere here. Desktop. On the desktop. Yeah. That's it's working. Come on, wake up. Oops. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get started actually. So my name is Shahid Umar, and I'm a professor and vice chair of research in the Department of Surgery. In the interest of time, I'm not going to talk about my career path because it's long. And so I'm kind of an anomaly. I never received a K award, but my lab has been funded for the last 15 years, with multiple R1s. I agree to some extent with Bret in that regard, that K99 or getting a K award is not the ultimate, death sentence, basically.
there are several means you can, achieve what you want to achieve, basically. And so what I would do is talk about my experience with the study sections, because I have been working on that study section for almost 5 years now. It's NIDDK is one of the institutes of NIH, and I have been sort of working for almost 5 years now. So I will be talking about the inside, what actually happens in real time, So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get started. So what happens when you submit a grant, actually? So it goes to a Center for Scientific Review, CSR, that actually then assigns it to integrated review groups, or IRGs. And these IRGs are nothing but a cluster of study sections that basically are based on scientific discipline. So you can have you can be a member of these study sections either as an ad hoc member, or you can be a permanent member, which is basically what is shown here as a chartered study section member, actually. There are study sections that actually deal with a lot of business grants as well as technology transfer grants. I'm not going to talk about those. Fellowship study sections as well as K awards, so some of those that I can reflect basically today. So at the study section meeting, what actually happens, right? As part of the initial scientific merit review process, these reviewers are asked to identify those applications with the highest scientific merit, okay? And at the meeting itself, these applications get discussed and scored. Based on the score, initially scores, some applications that do not meet the criteria for a scientific merit, they are streamlined. So these grants will never get, scored or discussed or scored, but you will get a critique, written critique from the 3 reviewers, actually, okay? At the study section, basically, it usually lasts 2 days. So usually they start on a Thursday and end on a Friday, for the most part that I have been doing, actually. The chair of the study section, as well as the scientific review officer or SRO, jointly conduct the meeting. Other members of the NIH can be part of that, but they don't get involved in the discussion. They can just sit in the corner and observe the whole process. Usually the meeting is started by the chair, who will ask the primary, secondary, and tertiary reviewer for their initial scores, and how enthusiastic are they about the application, okay? Then they basically proceed to summarize their reviews. So the primary reviewer will present, and then the secondary and tertiary reviewers are asked to provide their feedback if they have anything to add. If they don't have anything to add, they can just say, I have nothing to add, and they, the study section moves on. So once all the 3 reviewers have given their feedback, the panel is open for discussion, and then there is a limited amount of time when the chair then intervenes, and then after the discussion, the chair will sort of summarize the overall, grant proposal. And then when after that happens, then the chair will ask the reviewers if they would like to change their scores, for example. And then everybody gets to score. So they all vote independently. And then, I say it here that 1 week after the meeting, priority score information is sent to the application ER account. But usually what happens that when if a grant has done well, you usually get a report right away. These scores are posted. So because I said that it starts on a Thursday, ends on a Friday, they want you to enjoy. If the grant did well, they want you to enjoy the weekend. So that's the bottom line. If you don't get a score, by end of Friday, that's not necessarily gonna be a good news, basically, because so at the same time they don't want to ruin your weekend, so they won't post it, actually. So you will get it by Monday afternoon or something. That's how the nature of the profession is, right? So then what is the scoring procedure, actually? So every grant, there is a global score that defines the overall impact that the proposal has. And then there are 5 criteria, and so I'm sure for the K awards, it's slightly different, but usually, in our series awards, and we can talk about this later, there is significance, approach, innovation, investigator, and environment. So 5 criteria. So they are not necessarily a mean of those, the overall impact, basically, but every criterion score, is based on, what is the expertise of, of the reviewer, as well as what basically are they trying to accomplish in those study sections. So the score usually there is a 9-point scale, and what happens? I mean, for K awards they don't get percentile usually, but what usually happens is if it is most of the grants that are scored in the 1 and 2 range, they get funded. So it's almost like a golf score. I mean, the more negative it is, the better it is, basically. And so 1 is exceptional, 9 is poor, and then everybody gets a score, and then the score is averaged, and then it's multiplied by 10 to give you an overall score for each application. So I just have given an example that that's not a good score, by the way. No, I'm just kidding. And then after the study section has met, I mean, they will send you a summary statement, which is called the pink sheets, literally called the pink sheets, actually. And also, if there are certain revisions that you have to make in your, critiques, the chair will ask you, the SRO will remind you, that you have to make some changes. I mean, otherwise, if there are no changes, I mean, the whole critique is posted as it is. And then the scientific review officer basically prepares a resume and summary of discussion, and all the highlights, even if the grant was discussed, basically, right? And these summary statements are sent to applicants in about 4 to 6 weeks after the study section. So question is to fund or not to fund, right? So what happens once your grant gets scored? So members of the Institute's advisory council, they meet about 3 times a year. And then that's when they decide, which applications to fund. These council members, they themselves are not, they're not gonna review it. The review process has already been taken care of. However, they do consider which applications basically meets, or meet the Institute's overall mission and funding. The director of the Institute and the staff members, I mean, they reach their final decisions after considering both the opinions of the advisory council and the study section review statements. Now, Hannes talked about Paylines. That's a very important, component of, because every institute is different. So they will set their priorities based on what is their mission for each different institute. And this priority score is basically what will appear in your ERA Commons, website. So once you get your summary statement, then what do you do after you? So you have 3 choices. You can either resubmit, revise and resubmit, okay? And I will shed some light on that just in the interest of time. You can create a new application, or you can repurpose the application. So I'm just gonna focus on one because we don't have enough time. So how to respond to the reviewer's comment. So it depends on, what the overall impression is from the reviewers. So if the talk to your program officer about the Payline, okay? Ask about the probability of funding, okay? Get additional feedback on discussion. If the problems are minor and fixable, you start revising quickly, okay? Prepare a 1-page introduction to the statement. Discuss with your mentor. Respond to each criticism as precisely as you can. Don't argue with the reviewers. Now, I give a lot of F30 talks as well. And when you get your summary statement, you say that this reviewer doesn't know anything about it, you are frustrated. By all means, write it down on a piece of paper. Just don't send it. Okay. Now, remember, reviewers are fair, but not always right, okay? Now, if the overall enthusiasm for the proposal is low, no amount of revising will help, even if you address all the points, in the summary statement. So in the end, it sounds a cliche, but the bottom line is you have to stand out. Thank you.